Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for gathering together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We are in Parshat Noach, which is in the book of Genesis, starting in chapter 6 with verse 9. We're going to read through the entire Torah portion for this week in English translation, and then I'll share with you a bit of focus study about it, and then we'll open it up for our collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to join me in saying a blessing, giving thanks for this moment, feel free to do so. Baruch
Baruch atah
Adonai,
Elohim
Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher
asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעשות דברי תורה.
Torah. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words and deeds and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses, and I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. This is the line of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless in his age. Noah walked with God. Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth became corrupt before God. The earth was filled with lawlessness. When God saw how corrupt the earth was, for all flesh had corrupted its ways on earth, God said to Noah, I've decided to put an end to all flesh, because the earth is filled with lawlessness because of them. I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make it an ark with compartments and covered inside and out with pitch. This is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Make an opening for daylight in the ark and terminate it within a cubit of the top. Put the entrance to the ark in its side. Make it with bottom, second, and third depths. For my part, I am about to bring the flood, waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh under the sky in which there is breath of life. Everything on earth shall perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark with your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives. And of all that lives, of all flesh, you shall take 2 of each into the ark to keep alive with you. They shall be male and female. From birds of every kind, cattle of every kind of creeping thing on earth, 2 of each shall come to you to stay alive. For your part, take up everything that is eaten and store it away to serve as food for you and for them. Noah did so, just as God commanded him, so we did. Would you like to read at the start of chapter 7?
Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark with all your household, for you alone have I found righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean animal, you should take 7 pairs, males and their mates, and of every animal which is not clean, 2, male and its mate. Of the birds of the sky, 7 pairs, male and female, to keep the seed alive upon all the earth. For in 7 days' time, I will make it rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights. And I will blot out from the earth all existence that I created. And Noah did just as the Lord commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood came, waters on the earth. Noah, with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives, went into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Of the clean animals, of the animals that are not clean, of the birds, and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 of each, male and female, came to Noah into the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And on the 7th day, the waters of the flood came upon the earth.
Thank you. Justin, Linda, would you like to read a little bit? We're at verse 11.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on this day, all the springs of the great deep were split, and the windows of the heavens opened up, and the rain was upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. And this very day Noah came, and Shem and Ham and Japheth, Noah's sons, and Noah's wife and his sons' 3 wives with them into the ark. They and every beast after its kind, and every domestic animal after its kind, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every fowl after its kind, every bird of every wing. And they came to Noah, to the ark, 2 by 2, of all flesh in which there is the spirit of life. And those who came, male and female, of all flesh came, as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. Now the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and they lifted the ark, and it rose off the earth.
And the waters became powerful, and they increased very much upon the earth, and the ark moved upon the waters. And the waters became exceedingly powerful upon the earth, and all the lofty mountains that were under the heavens were covered up. 15 cubits above did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered up. And all flesh perished that moved on the earth, among the fowl, among the cattle, and among the beasts, and among all the creeping creatures that creep on the earth, and all mankind. Everything that had the breath of the spirit of life in its nostrils, of all that were on the dry land, died. And it, the flood, blotted out all beings that were on the face of the earth, and from man to animal, to creeping thing, and to the fowl of the heavens. And they were blotted out from the earth, and only Noah and those with him in the ark survived.
Thank you.
So,
And we have one more verse, please.
and the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days.
Thank you so much. Margot, would you like to read or chapter 8?
Yeah.
One?
Number 1, God remembered Noah, all the beasts, and all the cattle that were with him in the ark. And God caused a wind to blow across the earth, and the water subsided. The fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were stopped up, and the rain from the sky was held back. The waters then receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the waters diminished, so that in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to a rest on a mountainside, on a mountain of Ararat. The waters went on diminishing until the in the and diminishing until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first of the month, the tops of the mountains became visible.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Thompson, would you like to continue there at verse 6?
I would, thank you, Rabbi. 40 days after this, Noah opened the window he had made in the ark. He sent out the raven. It went out, but only circled to and fro around the ark until the water dried up from the surface of the earth. Noah sent out the dove to see if the water had subsided from the surface of the earth. But the dove could not find any place to rest its feet, and it returned to him to the ark, for there was still water over the entire surface of the earth. He stretched out his hand and took it and brought it back to himself into the ark. He waited another 7 days and once again sent out the dove from the ark. The dove came back to him toward nightfall, and behold, it had plucked an olive leaf with its beak. Noah then knew that the water had subsided from the earth. He waited yet another 7 days and once again sent out the dove, and this time it never again returned to him. In the 601st year of Noah's life, on the first day of the first month, the water had drained off the earth. Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked and saw that the earth's surface was drying. By the 7th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. God spoke to Noah, saying, "Leave the ark, you with your wife, and your sons with your sons' wives, all living creatures with you in the ark, from all flesh, birds, walking animals, and all the creatures that crawl upon the ground. Have them leave with you, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." Noah went out with his sons and his wife with his sons' wives. All the walking animals, all the crawling creatures, and all the birds, all the creatures that crawl upon the ground, came out of the ark by families. Noah built an altar to God. He took some of every species of domestic animal that does not impart spiritual defilement, and of every species of birds that does not impart spiritual defilement, and offered them up as scent offerings on the altar. God figuratively smelled the appeasing fragrance, and in response, God said to himself, "I hereby swear that I will never again curse the soil because of humanity, for the inclination of a person's heart is challenged by his evil inclination from his earliest youth. Never again will I strike down all life as I have done. As long as the earth lasts, none of the seasons, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, nor day and night will ever cease."
Thank you. Catherine, we're at the very start of chapter 9, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Thank you, Rabbi. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fertile and increase, and fill the earth. The fear and the dread of you shall be upon all the beasts of the earth and upon all the birds of the sky. Everything with which the earth is astir, and upon all the fish of the sea, they are given into your hand. Every creature that lives shall be yours to eat, as with the green grasses. I give you all of these. You must not, however, eat flesh with its lifeblood in it. But for your own lifeblood, I will require a reckoning. I will require it of every beast of man too. Will I require a reckoning for human life of every man for that of his fellow man? Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in his image did God make man. Be fertile then and increase, abound on the earth and increase on it." And God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "I now establish my covenant with you and your offspring to come, and with every living thing that is with you, birds, cattle, and every wild beast as well, all that have come out of the ark, every living thing on earth. I will maintain my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth."
Thank you so much. David, would you like to read a little bit? We're at the verse 12.
And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I am giving between me and you and every living being that is with you for eternal generations. I put my rainbow in the clouds and will become a covenant sign between me and the earth. And it will be when I bring a cloud over the earth, and the rainbow will appear in the cloud, And I'll remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living being of all flesh. And the waters will not become a flood to destroy all flesh again. And the rainbow will be in the cloud, and I'll see it to remember an eternal covenant between God and every living being of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I've established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. And Noach's sons who went out from the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham, he was the father of Canaan. These three were Noach's sons, and all the earth expanded from these. And Noach began to be a man of the ground, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank from the wine and was drunk. And he was exposed inside his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness, and told his two brothers outside. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and put it on both their shoulders, and then went backwards and covered their father's nakedness. And they faced backwards and did not see their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke up from his wine, and he knew what his youngest son had done to him. And he said, Canaan is cursed. He'll be a servant of servants to his brothers. And he said, Blessed is Hashem, God of Shem, and may Canaan be a servant to them. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be a servant to them. Enoch lived after the flood 300 years and 50 years, and all of Noach's days were 900 years and 50 years, and he died.
Thank you so much. Rose, we're at the very start of chapter 10, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Oh, okay. I had to check to see if I was muted or not. Hold on. Hold.
No, you're good.
Yeah, okay. No, okay. These are the lines of, we're doing the begats, looks like. These are the lines of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. Sons were born to them after the flood. The descendants of Japheth, I guess, are Gomer, Magog, Madai, Jakan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The descendants of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Rephath, and Togarmah. The descendants of Yavan were Elisha and Tarshish, the Kittim and the Doanim. From these maritime nations branched out. These are the descendants of Japheth by their lands, each with this language, their clans and their nations. The descendants of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The descendants of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabreka, the descendants of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush also begot Nimrod, who was the first mighty figure on earth. He was a mighty hunter by the grace of Hashem. Hence the saying, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter by the grace of Hashem. The mainstays of his kingdom were Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land, Assur went forth and built Nineveh. Rehoboth is Kala, and Resen between Nineveh and Kala, that is the great city. And Mitzrayim begot the Ludim, the Anamim, the Lahagim, the Naphtutim, the Patrusim, the Casluhim, and the Caphorim, whence the Philistines came forth. Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Her, and the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hittites, the Archonites, the Sinites, the Aridites, the Zemarites, the Hamorthites, and afterwards the clans of the Canaanites spread out. Jeez. The original Canaanite territory extended from Sidon as far as Gerar near Gaza and as far as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim near Lasha. These are the descendants of Ham, according to their clan and languages by their lands and nations. Some were also born to Shem, ancestors of all the descendants of Aber and older brothers of Japhet. The descendants of Shem, Elam, Asur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, Mash. Arpachshad begot Shelah, and Shelah begot Aber. 2 sons were born to Aber. The name of the first was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and the names of his brother was Yoktan. Yoktan begot Almodad, Sheleph, Hazar, Malveth, Jerah, Abda, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Yohab. All these were descendants of Yokron. Their settlements extended from Mesha as far as Hephon, the hill country to the east. These are the descendants of Shem, according to their clans and languages, by their lands, according to their nations. These are groupings of Noah's descending, according to their origins, by their nations, and from these the nations branched all over the earth after the flood.
Yasher Koch.
Yasher Koch.
It was definitely the Beats.
Well done, Rose. I'm glad it was you, not me.
Hmm.
Jen, if you'd like to read a little bit, I invite you to do so.
I'm sorry, who?
Carl and Jen, would you like?
Oh, oh, you want me to? Okay. So everyone on earth had the same language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, they came upon a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them hard." Brick served them as stone, and bitumen served them as mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build us a city and a tower with its top in the sky, to make a name for ourselves, else we shall be scattered all over the world." Adonai came down to look at the city and tower that man had built, and Adonai said, "If as one people with one language for all, this is how they have begun to act, then nothing that they may propose to do will be out of their reach. Let us then go down and confound their speech there, so that they shall not understand one another's speech." Thus Adonai scattered them from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel, because interesting. Because there Adonai confounded the speech of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them all over the face of the whole earth. This is the line of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he begot Arpachshad, 2 years of Canaan, but when they had come as far as Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah came to 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Okay, we were at
Oops, I missed that whole section there.
Yeah.
All right, where was it? Okay, so
No, you finished that.
2 years after the flood. After the birth of Arpachshad, Shem lived 500 years and begot sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he begot Shelah. After the birth of Shelah, Arpachshad lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Can you read or not?
I'm trying.
Okay. If you can't, you can.
When Shelah had lived 30 years, he begot Eber. After the birth of Eber, Shelah lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he begot Peleg. After the birth of Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and begot sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he begot Ru. After the birth of Ru, Peleg lived 209 years and begot sons and daughters. When Ru had lived 32 years, he begot Serug. After the birth of Serug, Ru lived 207 years and begot sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he begot Nahor. After the birth of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and begot sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he begot Terah. After the birth of Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and begot sons and daughters. When Terah had lived to 70 years, he begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Now this is the line of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran, and Haran begot Lot. Haran died in the lifetime of his father Terah in his native land, Ur of the Chaldeans. Abraham and Nahor took to themselves wives, the name of Abram's wife being Sarai, and that of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and they set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans for the land of Canaan. But when they had come as far as Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah came to 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
That is our entire Torah portion for the week. Thank you very much, everyone. So the center of our portion, Noah, is this flood that covers the face of the earth over the course of 40 days and 40 nights. It is such a powerful visual image that it is hard to get away from this notion, this picture, this almost cinematic image of this massive flood of water covering the entire earth. And so the allure is to get stuck there with that kind of an image of this massive amount of water covering the earth. But our medieval commentator, Rashi, who is our constant companion as we read through the entirety of Torah, stops here for a moment on the word that's used for a flood, mabul. And he pauses there and he ponders that word. And he ponders it because it's a very strange word. And what makes it strange, as Rashi acknowledges in his commentaries, we can't quite figure out what verb it is built off of. And in the Hebrew language, nouns and adjectives are built off of verbal roots. So to not be able to locate the parentage, if you will, of a noun is puzzling and provocative. So in his commentary, Rashi considers a number of possibilities. And I listed them here. He says, oh, one possibility is that it's built off the verb navel, which means to decay, to languish, to wither, to fade. And then he says, well, another possibility is that it's built off of the verb malal, which means to confuse, to confound. And yet there's another possibility, he says, that it's built off the verb yaval, which means to bring along, to carry along, as if there's a stream of water that's washing things along. So he kind of, in his commentary, adopts all three of these as possible parents for this word mabul, which is translated in our various editions as flood. And so in his commentary, he says, yes, here's the possibilities. It could be any one of these because it could be Navel because whatever happened decayed everything. It says, and it could be Balal because everything got confused as a result of this. And then he says, and it could be Yaval because it transported everything, swept everything along. So the first two don't seem, the notion of decaying and languishing, they don't seem to necessarily involve water. The second one, the verb that means to confuse or confound, that too, not necessarily a water image. It's only when we get to this third possibility where we have the potential for, well, we can see how water is involved here. And in fact, that verb, yaval, produces as a noun a water course or stream. But then he concludes his commentary by commenting on how the Aramaic translation of Torah chooses a very interesting word that he's very intrigued by. The word that the Aramaic translation uses for what is for the word mabul, which in English we get translated as flood, is tufana, which the word tufana comes from the Aramaic verb tuf. And the word tuf means to bubble up, to come to the surface. So now this is intriguing because now we have something, an image where not only is everything being submerged, but in the Aramaic translation, the nuance is everything is going to bubble up. And so Rashi says, yes, that's an interesting word to use because this event caused all things to float away from their places and brought them to Babylonia. This event took things from where they were supposed to be and brought these bodies to Babylonia, he says. And of course, Babylonia is a site of Jewish exile. So in that reading, this event that's being described is an event that causes things to be out of place, not just geographically, but out of place spiritually, to be out of purpose. So what is this mabul that's happening? Is it just a lot of massive precipitation, what we would call water? Or is it some kind of other event which is dislocating of people's sense of being centered in themselves, having a sense of purpose, a sense of being grounded, having a knowledge of why they are there and what their mission is? The instruction that God gives to Noah in our story is to go into the Teva, chapter 7, verse 1. The word Teva is very interesting because it means literally a box. And in Jewish tradition, that word Teva becomes a substitute or another symbol for Devar, that is word. And so the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he plays with that notion that the word Teva becomes another meaning for word. And so he renders the instruction from God to Noah as go into the word. So what would that mean? That there's a cataclysmic event that's about to happen that's going to dislocate all of life, that's going to confuse all of life, that's going to carry away, wither away, cause senselessness for all of life. So the instruction as the Baal Shem Tov understands it, is what's going to enable you to provide you with some protection during this cataclysmic event is to go into the Word, to go into this body of knowledge, if you will, that it is evolved. That is what will protect you during this time of decay, folly, confusion, and dislocation. Now we can play with this rest of the story to see whether or not Noah understands that that's what's being asked of him, or whether he is taking the instruction on a more prosaic and literal level. Oh, I'm supposed to build a physical box to get inside. And rather than understanding, as the Baal Shem Tov is, no, you're supposed to get into this body of wisdom that's being provided for you. That's what's going to provide you with survival of this moment of dislocation and confusion. And we can talk about whether or not his building a physical box, as opposed to going into the language and the words, results in Noah fulfilling his capacity to provide clarity at the end of this cataclysm. But I'd like to follow this notion about what the instruction about going into the Word by taking a step back and looking at the overall narrative of Torah and the role that the concept and the symbol word plays in that overall narrative. So we have in this meta narrative of the story of Torah, we basically have 2 points on this journey that Torah is taking us on. And one end of that journey is represented by Mitzrayim, which is Egypt. And Mitzrayim represents constraint, lack of sovereignty. And then at the other end, where the Israelite people are journeying towards, is the land of milk and honey. How do you get from Mitzrayim to the land of milk and honey? You need to go through the wilderness. And the word for wilderness is midbar. And the word midbar, if you will, is built off of davar, word. So this journey to go from this moment of dislocation, exile, to a place of being centered and located and purposeful in the world requires you to go through this wilderness. What is this wilderness that is described here by the word midbar? So here we have a midrash that says, essentially, before you can get to the land of milk and honey, you need to make yourself like the wilderness. To be like the wilderness is to be stripped of everything. It is to be in a place that is open. It is to be in a place that is exposed. This is ultimately where Torah gets introduced at Mount Sinai, in the wilderness, where it's wide open. Everyone is vulnerable and exposed. And then in a more recent Hasidic commentary, it continues this notion. If one wishes to merit the receiving of Torah, one must be naked and completely empty, like midbar. What does it mean to be completely naked, to be empty? I think it's part of that whole notion that we carry through us in our tradition about the need to purge oneself of all those concepts and constructs that we create to protect ourselves in this world. You somehow need to purge yourself of all of those protections. You need to purge yourself of how the ego is serving to protect you. So when I thought about this notion about being emptied and being exposed and vulnerable and needing to purge oneself of all those accumulations and layers of protections, I was thinking about art and I thought, what could I bring? What evokes that for me artistically? And I went to Mark Rothko. Mark Rothko, born in Russia, came with his family, first settled here in Portland, Oregon, and goes on to become one of the greatest of the abstract expressionists. And much of his work consists of canvases, blocks of colors, fields of color, where those blocks seem to be frayed at the edges and they seem to be floating almost in space. And then towards the end of his career, he was invited by a couple, Jean and Dominique de Menel, who were very devoted Catholics. They invited him to help create a sanctuary where art could facilitate a spiritual experience of human cohesion, integrity, and peace. And so he created 14 huge panels that would go into this chapel space that was being constructed in Houston, Texas. The largest one is about 15 feet high, and the widest one of them is about 25 feet wide. These are huge pieces, and they are in a similar palette, all of them, in plums and burgundies and black. And Mark Rothko's son, Christopher, wrote a beautiful book, Mark Rothko from the Inside Out. And in one chapter, he discusses the chapel that is created. He wrote this: "The chapel space makes you feel small, like the tiny dust particle in the endless carpet of the universe that in fact you are. Your task as you face the infinite, suggested by the 14 murals, is to reassert, to find new credibility in your uniqueness, your reason to exist, your greater than dust status." In the Rothko Chapel, he writes, "We find a single voice singing a melody of its own composition, a song Rothko has written just for that time and place, but representing the culmination of all he has sung before, a conch shell with Rothko's voice. And yours?" So Rothko's project here, in general and specifically in his chapel, was to assist the viewer in relinquishing our comfort of being detached. He said, Rothko said, "To view my paintings best, you need to stand 18 inches from them, no more. Because when you're standing 18 inches from them, you become less distant, less detached, less aware of other things around you, and in a sense, you become absorbed into the painting. You're no longer a detached critic looking at the outside world, but you begin to take a journey inward, first into the painting itself, and into the experience of the painting, and then into yourself, regarding your reactions to being inside this painting. And so this is, in a sense, what is happening with Midbar also. Midbar is meant to be that part of the process, going from dislocation, exile, to place of settlement, purpose, and promise and responsibility, is that we need to go through that experience of shedding everything, We can't be just kind of be detached and critiquing everything. We need to be immersed in the experience, and in its experience that ultimately is one of self-discovery. And in the self-discovery, according to Rothko, one encounters not just the ego, one goes beyond that. One discovers the sublime, the spiritual. So here is a piece that Hannah Arendt wrote. We're most familiar perhaps with the book that you wrote about totalitarianism, the pieces that you wrote about the Adolf Eichmann trial, and about evil, but you also wrote about love in a book called Love and St. Augustine. And what you wrote about love was this: fearlessness is what love seeks. Such fearlessness exists only in the complete calm that can no longer be shaken by events expected of the future. Hence, the only valid tense is the present, the now. This notion of presence that she's hinting at has to do with the removal of expectancy. That we should not live either burdened by the past or worried about the future. We should live in the present, in the midbar, if you will. And we should live in gratitude and with offer. And this is where it's in the midbar where the Israelites are taught these practices about how to live in gratitude and how to live with offering. So as I thought more about what does it mean to live in a time when there's a mabul, some kind of massive precipitation causing dislocation, confusion, and senselessness, I thought about Bob Dylan and the song Hard Rain. And Hard Rain's going to come is one that he wrote in 1962, the summer of 1962. He first sings it at the Gaslight Cafe in Greenwich Village in September, some date in September of 1962. And what we know about 1962 is a lot of things were happening. There was the Cuban Missile Crisis. There was the confrontation that happened at the University of Mississippi when James Meredith sought to be the first Black individual to register at the University of Mississippi. And then also in spring of 1962, Michael Harrington wrote called The Other America, which shocked America because emerging out of World War II, Americans had this, there was this kind of assumption that America was now not only this powerful nation, but was this prosperous nation, becoming this prosperous middle-class nation that everyone was reaping the rewards of. And he writes this book that points out there are 40 million people living in poverty. One in five people is living at the poverty level in the United States. And this overturns what had been a common assumption. And then eventually it leads to President Johnson and his war on poverty. But at the time that Dylan is writing this, there's all this sense of the possibility of nuclear war. There's this developing intensity and brutality of the civil rights movement. There's the expose of 1 in 5 Americans living in poverty. He writes the song that has lines like this, that he stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. He was out in front of a dozen dead oceans. He saw a newborn baby with wild wolves all around him. He saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. He saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. He heard one person starving, many people laughing. And so then the voice says to him, well, what are you going to do now? In the face of with all these horrors? Is it just all going to be doom and destruction? What to do? And his answer in the final verses, well, I'm going to go back out there. I'm going to go back out there among all the people. I'm going to go back out there among where all these horrors are. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to climb to the mountain. I'm going to tell it. I'm going to think it. I'm going to speak it. I'm going to breathe it. And I'm going to reflect it from the mountain so all souls can see it. And stand on the ocean until I start singing. And I'll know my song well before I start singing. There's a hard rains in it. So I go back to what is the message that I got from reading Noah, Parshat Noach this year. And that is, in this world which has both what we talked last week about, there's classical physics, which is descriptive of the world of predictability, and then there's quantum physics, which is descriptive of the world of unpredictability. That there's both order and chaos in this world. And when chaos begins to swell up, when it becomes this overwhelming force that causes disruption, dislocation, confusion, anxiety, and fear, what should we do? Should we do what Noah did? Build this wooden craft? Because what he ends up doing is he is silent during this entire moment. He doesn't sing a song like Dylan does. He's silent. And when he gets onto dry land finally, he finally speaks. And his first words are to curse one of his sons in a drunken stupor. I think the message is to deepen ourselves into this body of wisdom. That's what's going to carry us through. We need to learn to sing this song, which is what Rothko is wanting us to do as well. In fact, as part of the opening of the Rothko chapel, composer Morton Friedman developed a musical piece to kind of give expression to the visual work that Rothko had done. And Torah itself becomes known as a song. This is what Moses sings in Deuteronomy. I'm going to sing this song. And so it is learning this devar, this word, and learning how to sing it. And that's going to help us get through these moments of hard rain, these moments of Mabul, of storm-tossed seas. And that, my friends, I think is how we get through the problem. That's what I saw. I realize I've taken us too close to 8 o'clock, but I want to, if with your permission, extend our time together and listen to your responses and reactions to Parshat Noach. So if you'd like to share, please raise your hand. Richard here.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity for analysis. When I opened this up and saw these waters, I thought about the beginning of Genesis, where the water separated from the waters and gave us dry land. And here's a time of crisis where no. You've got to go, as you say, deeper into yourself to take a look at what your ego issues are, and how that isn't a part of the consciousness that we're trying to groom in our clan. And we are now very much in the liminal time. We're going through some kind of redoing of our government, whatever it is. And this is speaking to what we need to do within ourselves. So those efforts, that sense of being maintaining the miraculousness of being a harvest of people working together for the good of all. That needs to be a part of every breath. And aside from what your ego wants to do as an individual, no, 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 no. This is a consciousness of bringing to the earth. And things have been bubbling up, gone deep enough to take a look at what the Buddhists have called clear thinking. And the word sublimity is sometimes used, well, you're just sublimating. Yeah, I'm going below to bring out what is in my heritage, what is being given by God, what is being given by the power to be here for the sake of heaven, not for the sake of my dominance or the sake of my feeding myself or whatever it is. And this is, I wrote down here, ego drive, just a minute before you use the word ego. And I think this is just, it's going back to the beginning, saying, wait a minute. I separated the waters from the water for a reason, so we could take a breath and move on with the course of making this a beautiful place, not to make it prosperous for everybody, but to make it healthy for everybody to use this time and their own time. So that's what I got.
Thank you. Very precious. Let me call upon David and Catherine and Rose. Go ahead, David.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. I think both Rose and Catherine were ahead of me, but mine's short, which is to say, this time, unlike other times I've gone through this Parsha, I had a very vivid picture of the ark, the Teva, as being a box 45 feet deep, 75 feet wide, 450 feet long, with a window a foot and a half from the top, and with floors without windows. And the box isn't open till the verse where it says, and Noah uncovered the ark. And it's just an image that planted itself in me. I have no commentary beyond that.
I think it's an image that is implanted in most of us. There are movies that have been made with that image. There have been churches that have sought to build exact replicas of it. Yeah. So it's very easy to stay at that level of that physical structure. So I understand. Let me call upon Catherine and then we'll go to Rose.
Okay, I think Rose was before me.
Hey, let me call.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Pearls before swine.
Okay. Okay, first of all, I want to thank you, Rabbi, for these profound reflections that you sent us on Tuesday. Really, they were very welcome to me this week as an educator. Okay, I have a question and a comment. My question is a point of clarification that when they're talking about clean animals and clean birds, I'm assuming that correlates with those dietary restrictions that we hear about later on. Is that correct? Okay, good. So it's not explained how they're unclean until later on. Okay. And the observation is just that I sensed that there is some poetry in the fact that this first journey is atop the water. You need the water to swell up for you to be carried from Egypt to Babylon. But the next journey takes place on dry land from Egypt to Canaan. So um, that's just incredible, that we have this sort of yin and yang of dryness and wetness that are related to these journeys.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I hadn't really thought about that. That's lovely. Thank you, Ken. And Rose?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, because I kind of wanted to riff a little bit on that as well. It seems like Hashem takes several do-overs. And, so we have, well, it's not really a do-over, but in just a chapter ago in Bereshit, or just a parsha ago in Bereshit, you have Hashem taking the waters that were already there and pulling out the dry land from them, going from, and there's this big water image of chaos, which is Babylonian, like in the sea monsters and all this stuff. But it's it's a symbol of this kind of chaos, but it's also later on a symbol of, and then what happens here is that Hashem is taking a do-over. He's using water literally to wash away the world as it had evolved to that point. You had to get rid of what's going on. It was like flushing the toilet or just washing things away. And you have the same thing, I think, in the story of the Exodus, where the Egyptians are washed away. It's kind of narrowed down to that. So, but then water is needed for life. So I think that beyond just the dry, wet duality, there's a duality within water, is that it can be a source of a symbol of destruction or cleansing, but you also need it as renewal because all our rituals involve water. And you have Miriam being at the Red Sea, but she's also the um, the agent of water, and that's what her name says. So, I find that very interesting, and I think in a culture that evolved in this dry region that doesn't get rain very much and is mostly dry, the relationship with water can be it can be tricky. So it's kind of interesting. But I also want to make one more comment. There must have been the animals on the ark must have been able to reproduce because Noah sacrifices
Yeah.
the animals, or at least the kosher ones.
Yeah.
So if he sacrificed one of two, a bad move. So I'm assuming they reproduce, which, I mean, can you imagine this giant box with a gazillion stinky animals? I mean, I can't think of any, Jews don't have an image of hell. We just have, you know, just the place that nothing happened, Sheol. But this to me would be the closest thing to hell I could think of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. Bring all that material. Thank you. And let me call upon Robert.
Well, thank you again for another lovely evening. I find myself reflecting to distill my thoughts, and I really appreciate all the work you put in every week and all the thought that went into this week. This is not the first time I followed Rose when she really set me up. So, so thank you, Rose. The Torah and all holy books are capable of such vibrant, profound imagery. And I think this section perhaps most especially. And like Rose, I was thinking of water. So when I think of floods and confusion, I put them together. We live in a world, I believe, where there is a flood of confusion around the world. I'm not talking about our own society alone, where there is a flood of values that do not lead to unity, but lead to discord and unhappiness and so forth. And so I can see these floods like you have waves of, in quantum field theory, as you know, the particles flow in waves, and waves are part of an ocean. In fact, the atmosphere is an ocean of a sort. So I think of the flood of all these things, some good, some bad, that we're constantly bombarded with or blessed by. So water can be very destructive, but there's nothing more life-giving than water. And for me, the most life-giving water is the Word of God. So when I think of the imagery of the ark, I always think of the covenant. That ark, symbolically to me, is the covenant. Here is what I have given you. I have expectation. If we're in that, again, I'm just speaking for myself, in that ark of the covenant, which is recognizing my responsibility and doing my best or trying to do my best to fulfill it, I'm above the water. That water is the Word of God to me in this imagery that I'm using. But if I fall from out of the ark into the water in a state of disobedience, I will drown in my own disobedience in that water. For example, we look at the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Let's use the Ten Commandments as an ark. Now I say, I'm going to obey that. I sail above the water. I'm a happy person like Margot. She's always happy, and all of you, right? But then if I start killing, God forbid, I have violated what's in that water. And those laws, those words will consume me like fire. Thank you again for all the work and profundity you put into this. And such a lovely group. But I do read what you write, actually.
Thank you, Rose, for adding to the profundity of this moment. And I just want to feedback to everyone what you have helped me to see in our time together here in this last hour, which is this. During these times of confusion, dislocation, and distress, there are, in a sense, two ways of responding to it. And this is the language I use. One way is a profane way. And the profane way is the way of fear and violence. And in a sense, okay, that's one way. The other way is a holy way. It's the way of love and compassion and transcendence of one's fears, anxieties. And in what I just saw right now, in our hour together, and through our discussion together, is that Noah, at the end of this journey, the way he deals with it is through an assertion of his fears, his anxieties, his anger, his divisiveness. And that's the profane way. And now, in the course of our discussion, you've helped me to see, and the profane way is somehow related to being stuck in a literal frame of mind. What's the alternative to a literal frame of mind? Is an imaginative frame of mind.
Yeah.
Where one can see things that don't yet exist necessarily and live according to them. One can imagine other possibilities. And so I'm now seeing that the imaginative way is more as Rashi was offering to us. He's offering us the imaginative way to look at this. Oh, what's really happening here is this is an event that allows people to be so swept away by the chaos they ended up not knowing and not being in a place where they should be in their state of mind and their spirituality.
Yeah.
And so the holy way is a way is not tied to something as singular and one-dimensional as a literal approach to it. And so this is lovely to have, for me to have that kind of gift from all of you, that understanding, as we are now just entering into, this is just our second portion of our reading this year of Torah. To carry that with me as I go through the rest of the sessions. I'm going to carry that notion. I'm going to carry what Rothko is trying to do for us, which is to say, don't be a detached critic observer. Become part of the story. Yourself in the story. Locate yourself. Dig deep into it. Dig deep into the story and dig deep into yourself. And I'm going to carry the kind of statement of courage and integrity and defiance that Dylan was talking about in his song, Hard Rain. I'm gonna learn my song and I'm gonna sing it in the face of all this hard rain. And of course, one can do that best when one is in communion and community with the presence of others. And so I'm very grateful you provide. And I look forward to our continuing this journey and meeting with you our next time and the times after. God bless you all. I look forward.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.